Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast. I'm your host, PKJ, and we're here to bring you Insomniac inspiration and help you to wind down before you close your eyes. Purpose of this broadcast is to talk about those things that keep Black America awake and find out actionable hope or ways to produce actionable hope to help us rest better. Today is going to be a good show, and I'm excited to have you here with us. If you're joining us, you can join us by Facebook, you can join us by Instagram, and you can join us by YouTube. I'm excited to have you here today. As you come on, let me go ahead and do this for myself. As you come on, want to make sure that you are sharing your page, sharing this to all of your Insomniac friends, and telling them that the East Coast Insomniac West Coast Wind Down podcast is on the air. Come on, share. Share it with anybody that you think may be up, because you know they're not asleep. They're probably scrolling through TikToks. Share it with your friends that may be working the night shift, the late shift. Share it with your friends on the West Coast. Share it with your friends on the East Coast, and we're going to hold it down here in Central Arkansas in the Midwest. This is going to be an exciting show, I promise you. If you loved last week, you're going to love this week. Come on, share, tag. This is going to be very informative, and I am excited about our guest who is here with us. Let me get my comments on the screen if you're here. And you know what? I keep forgetting I need to change my privacy. And make it public. Good deal. Good morning. What's going on, HC? Hey, Sharonda Nicole, Lawrence Matthew. What's going on, Sister Yule? Good evening. Again, welcome to the East Coast Insomniac West Coast Wind Down podcast. I am your host, PKJ, and we are here to have a very frank discussion. Again, our discussion on today, we are in still talking about melanated mental health, and this is episode number 2. And this is part 2 of the Melanated Mental Health series, and we are going to be talking about mental health and how it impacts the African American community. And again, this is something that you don't want to miss. Again, let me pull my Instagram up because my questions and my comments won't come up over here on my studio here. So let me pull up my Instagram. And all right, there we go. Hey, Jude Nicole, thank you for joining us. Thank you. All right. So again, tag, share, and let's have a conversation. Let's have a serious conversation. All right. So we've been talking about we've been talking about melanated mental health, and how it impacts the African American community. And the reason we're doing that, straight off the jump, straight out the door, when we're talking about mental health on my first two shows, is because this is Mental Health Awareness Month. Again, we talked about how mental health awareness started back in 1949. And I was made aware of that by our guest who is going to be joining us here in a moment. And this is one of those National Awareness Month days that has been one of the longest running, but probably the least recognized as far as in the United States. And so we want to make sure that this month we recognize and are aware of the mental well-being of our community. So I'm going to introduce you to I'm going to introduce you to her, and then I'm going to allow her to introduce herself through some of the questions that I ask. And would you please join me in welcoming our guest, Dr. Cremila Banks. Dr. Cremila Banks, let me tell you a little bit about her. I'm going to tell you, and she'll be able to tell you some of the other things about herself, but I'm going to tell you Dr. Banks, she is a licensed psychologist in private practice, and she's also licensed by the Arkansas Board of Psychology. And we're going to talk about a little bit later why that's very critical. That's very important for us to know and understand. And also, she is certified as a school psychologist, certified by the National Association of School Psychologists. And so this is Dr. Cremila Banks, and we're going to welcome her to the show. Welcome, Dr. Banks. How you doing?
You. I'm doing well.
Good deal. Good deal. Again, thank you for sharing this time with us. And I'm going to be looking at her here on my screen here, but I'm looking at you in the camera when I'm talking directly to you. But I'm going to, again, thank you again, Dr. Banks. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about another reason why I invited her to the broadcast. And we're going to just jump right into this. And so, Dr. Banks, just so the people will know, I think it's very important. You don't think it's so important, but I think it's important. Let's talk to the people about how long have you been practicing in the mental health field?
I've been practicing in the mental health field approximately, wait, let me see. I started out at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, and I was actually in a group at probably 19, so 45 this year. So what is that, 20, 20 something?
20 something years?
20 plus years.
All right. Y'all see black don't crack, right? So she's been practicing.
Now, as an independent practitioner with my own business since 2004.
Okay, since 2004. All right. And so what started you on the path to studying and practicing mental health? What was it that started you on this journey? Was it an organic journey, or was it something that you knew you were going to do once you went into education?
This is where my spirituality really plays a role. I've always said that it just happened for the first 10 years of my career. However, when I celebrated my 10th year reunion for my high school, I went back and looked at my memory books, and you have to know me. I'm over the top with everything. I fill out every line. My book was packed. And as I read, it said I predicted I would be a pediatrician or a child psychologist. Well, no, a psychologist or a pediatrician.
Wow.
So it was interesting because when I went to the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville to study for my undergrad degree, I was a kinesiology major. And as I started my freshman year, I ended up taking abnormal psychology. And I took everything kind of out of order because my scholarship covered 18 hours and I had to come home and work in the summer. So I needed a full load. So whatever they were offering, I tried to take it. And even with it being a prerequisite having prerequisites, I didn't take those. I went into abnormal psychology with a lot of seniors, and I thoroughly enjoyed that course. And after that, I declared myself a psych major. But I still believe in divine order, and I really believe that God has purposes on certain lives, and I now know that I'm serving my purpose.
Wow, wow. And so you had in your memory book that you want to be either a pediatrician or a psychologist.
Yes, and the book is right over there, yeah, it's right over
and,
there.
and and so now you're working in psychology
Uh
and
huh.
you
And
are
I predicted the
servicing.
salary, and I said
Yeah,
I would be self-employed.
self-employed. Wow, wow. And you're also serving children in schools.
I up until 2012. And so I worked in the schools throughout the state of Arkansas, working with the most difficult behaviors in the state. But I
Wow.
still serve children. I mean, at the juvenile facility and even in practice.
Wow, wow, wow! That is amazing. And so you all hear her credentials. Of course, she doesn't, make a big to do of that. But I say they matter. They matter. Sometimes because I think that your credentials give you credibility, so that when you start speaking, people will know you ain't just talking out the side of your neck, right? So
Absolutely.
good deal. So let's spotlight the subject matter we're talking. We're talking about mental health, and so
Mhm.
you know this is part two of our discussion. And last week we gave out some statistics from American Psychological Association, from CDC and various places. And we're coming out of a pandemic, right?
Absolutely.
So with us coming out of this pandemic, why? How do you think the pandemic? Well, let's go back and ask this question first. Why do you think mental health awareness is important, particularly for the Black community?
Man, mental health is awareness is really important because if you are affected with mental health issues, it affects every aspect of your life, your job, your family, every aspect of your life. With mental health awareness, it can help you ascertain better treatment, help you dispel those stigmas that are out there so that you will get the treatment. And to be aware that other people are going through that emotional struggle, you don't feel alone. For the
Right.
Black community, awareness is paramount because frequently in the Black community, we don't believe in mental health issues. We sometimes don't even believe that they exist. With that being said, I like to explain it, and I'm going to try to reduce the psychobabble and try to keep this as a really good conversation.
Yeah.
But I try to equate a lot of the mental health issues to medical issues. People understand that if you have high blood pressure or if your blood pressure goes too low, you typically will fall asleep. You have behavioral symptoms.
Yeah.
And I frequently ask people, does blood flow through the brain? And they say yes. And I say, well, does blood flow through the heart? They say yes. I say, well, they're both organs, right? Why would everyone get a perfect brain but not get a perfect heart? So we
Wow.
frequently will understand that other organs can malfunction, and yet the brain is the control center. It would have more likelihood to go awry or to have dysfunction than any other organ. But yet, because it's such a negative connotation attached to that, especially in the Black community, we frequently don't believe that mental health issues exist. People have even said that it's not real, it's made up. What I frequently will allow people to say is when you're going through it, it's an internal struggle. These mental health issues are real, yet they are based on an illusion. And if you can get people to understand that, man,
I like what you just said there, that mental health issues are real, but they are based on illusion. Can you elaborate on that?
absolutely. Frequently, when you have a depressed or anxious person, because of like things down to self motivation are controlled by neurotransmitters. So norepinephrine and dopamine levels control just your ability to want to get out of bed, to be motivated to get up for the day. And people don't understand that. They think it's all choice. So even though you may have some desire, your brain is telling you that you don't feel like it and you don't have the desire. And so people don't realize that that's chemically controlled. Everything is centralized to certain areas of your brain. Your amygdala controls your mood, your ability to want to get up, and all of that. And then you have neurotransmitters that are chemically controlling those behaviors as well. So just like when you have high blood pressure or you have your blood pressure goes low, you fall asleep. You have a behavioral something different, or just like when you have surgery and you go in, you don't go in sleepy, yet they put chemicals in your IV and they put your brain to sleep.
Right.
So if you can chemically induce sleep, people need to understand that you can chemically induce and change mood and a lot of other behaviors.
Right. So when you talk about mental health, sometimes medication is good and sometimes necessary. Okay. Right.
Definitely.
Right. And so why do you think that there's such a stigma behind medicine when it comes to treating mental health?
You know, I've pondered that question for many years, and I can't find a realistic answer because frequently I am convinced that every drug addict had some mental health issues. What people don't realize is that things like alcohol work on the same receptors that anti anxiety medication work on.
Wow.
So you'll have an anxious person who won't take psychotropic medications because of what people think, yet they'll take drugs off the street that they don't know what was put in them. So it's basically just the myths and the stigmas that are associated that are keeping people from taking the correct treatment
Yeah.
because they will take street drugs.
Right. They'll take street drugs, but not
Right.
prescribed drugs. Okay. So last week we talked about how blacks are more often diagnosed with schizophrenia and less diagnosed with mood orders compared to white people with the same symptoms. Why is this important? So tell us, what is the difference between schizophrenia and a mood disorder, and why is it important that we don't mistake one for the other?
So typically with people with mood disorders like bipolar, they will have hallucinations and delusions, but they're only during their manic phases. There are times when they have depressive swings, and they usually are not hallucinating or having delusions. The difference is schizophrenics will typically have delusions and hallucinations, whether they're in a manic phase or not.
Okay. So what can you explain to the audience what a manic phase? What is mania or being manic?
Mania is characterized by racing thoughts, a lack of sleep up all night. You'll see a lot of schizophrenics or bipolars when they go through their mania phases. They're up all night. They don't sleep for days. You see them have impulsive behaviors. Sometimes they become over sexual, where they're having impulsive sexual behaviors. They may do things like steal or any impulsive behavior that categorized by that. They have a lot of racing thoughts, typically irrational thoughts. They may even connect a lot of grandiose thinking where they feel like they can conquer the world. Some of them even go as far as to say that they're God,
Wow.
or that they believe that other people, they have a special connection with the president, or even God or Beyonce.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So why is it important that we don't diagnose people with mood disorders as having schizophrenia?
Because a lot of the psychotropic drugs that you're going to address, you would put them on antipsychotics with schizophrenia. But a lot of some of the medications that are utilized to treat, and this is what people have to understand. We treat symptoms. We don't treat necessarily disorders. I've frequently been asked a lot of the times about what do I need to give them? You know, they have ADHD or they have schizophrenia or they have bipolar. You're treating symptoms. So if they're, psychosis, you want to put them possibly on a mood stabilizer. So some of the medications that stabilize mood can be used for both. But if they're schizophrenic, you are probably definitely going to be using an antipsychotic.
Right. And if you use an antipsychotic on a person with a mood disorder, how does that affect them?
Well, typically, sometimes they need it if they are experiencing psychosis.
Okay.
But if they're just mood disorder and they're just having a fluctuating mood, you could do a mood stabilizer and you should be fine.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. So, so of course, as I was getting ready to state earlier, we were coming out of a pandemic. We're in what we call an endemic now, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted mental health, whether it's negative or positive? How has it impacted it?
And I'm a research buff. So, of course, I go to the research, but the only positive thing that I feel like COVID and what the research suggests is that we became more aware that mental health issues were truly real. So
Yeah.
it forced all countries to pay attention to this whole idea of mental health. Now, whether or not a lot of these problems were just exacerbated with COVID, and I think that they were, I think that they were underlying there all along and they were just exacerbated by COVID because
Yeah.
we had to pay attention. We were forced to go home. We were forced into more situations where we were spending more time with families. You saw a lot of families break up during this time.
Wow.
So, in a positive way, we had to acknowledge that mental health illness is real. But on a negative light, the World Health Organization, of course, WHO, said that during the first year, anxiety and depression increased a massive 25%. Now, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I am a research buff, but as it relates to mental health statistics, I'm not sure that we're accurate in our representation because people frequently don't report their mental health issues. We have NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, still reporting that 1 in 5 will have suffered with a mental health issue over the course of their life. I'm here to tell you from experience that that number is so far from the truth. I'm more inclined at this point, after experience, to say it may be 4 out of 5.
Yeah. That and that is more aligned with what Mental Health America quoted. They said is 46% of people in America will probably experience a mental health condition.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, and I think it's important that we we get the numbers right so that we can begin to address the issues properly. And again, thank all of you who are joining. Thank you for your comments and keep coming. And we're going to keep the conversation going. So we know that COVID-19 put a strain on the medical, the hospitals and the doctors. Did it put a strain also on the mental health field?
Absolutely, because they were not allowing you to treat unless it was an emergency procedure or something like that. So, and I'll tell you guys, I didn't go home. They sent us home, and I didn't find out I was supposed to go home until after everybody came back.
Wow.
I mean, I was still seeing clients. Now, I did have a substantial decline in clients because a lot of I see pain patients and a lot of various clients that were not able to seek services because they were not having the procedures or things like that. So I did experience a decline. However, my clients that were needing services, I continue to see.
Okay. So did you use the telehealth option?
I did do some telehealth, but I was actually in the office as well.
Wow. Okay, because you realize that you had some clientele that, you know, that's a part of their community, or their
Hmm.
support system for you and others like you to be there.
That's right.
Yeah, and so it, COVID-19 also broke down those supports, that people had in their circle.
Definitely. That was one of the, I think, the negative aspects of COVID is that people, like I said, were forced to go home. It took them out of the community. Some people really rely heavily on their community involvement or the support that they receive from the community. So that was detrimental to their mental health as well.
Wow, wow. So I'm going to ask you another question. Last week we talked about how there are only, and I had the statistic up here earlier, but the American Psychological Association only has 4% of their board Black or African American, but we see more prevalence in the African American community, right?
Hmm.
So, what do you think we can do to increase diversity among influencers and change agents?
I did some research on this because that's a question that, once again, has pondered me for years as I have fought to try to involve more minorities in the profession. And it all pointed toward federal legislature that we needed to have more federal involvement. And also at the state and local levels, they said that we need to encourage grants and to try to reduce the factors that contribute to retention. I'll tell you now, if you're not a hustler like Dr. Banks, you probably won't earn much in the mental health profession.
Wow.
In
So,
fact,
go
I
ahead.
thought about getting a job when the pandemic hit, and it was looking pretty dismal.
Wow. Wow. And so do you think that is due to what insurance payers pay out for mental health versus what they pay out for medical doctors?
That is a lot of the case. But they have had some increases with mental health payments. So a lot of it comes down to just the jobs and what they will pay.
Okay. Okay.
Because
So
the big hospitals will get, let me give you a perfect example. When I was an intern, I was working as a contractor for the Methodist Behavioral Health, and they would earn 100 and something dollars per hour. I think it was like 150 or something. But I would drive around the corner to my office with the same degree, the same license, and was on my own liability insurance, just under a different, under my own name, and would earn $49.12.
wow.
Now, I initiated a big movement with Medicaid, Arkansas Medicaid. It's been was 2008. Well, it disrupted in 2018, but anyway, about 2000 and around that time. And they did eventually change from RSPMI providers and bring practitioners up a little more. So some of the entities pay pretty good, but there's still a disparity in what private practitioners make and what hospitals or big entities can make.
Wow. And so if you get into the mental health field, it has to be for the love.
Oh, it's definitely for the love. But now I won't sit here and pretend my expectations are a lot higher, but I also hustle. I've always had two or three jobs and entities, even though I do private practice, I do contracts. And so you can do okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you are one of only four African Americans who are certified by the Arkansas Board of Psychology, right?
Now, that was when I first got my license, and that was in 2004. Now, I have heard that it has increased up to as many as maybe close to 10, but definitely you can count on two hands. I
Wow.
called the board today when I realized that that was something of importance, and they released the email list to me and told me to email everybody and find out what their race.
Really?
But they send me, but thank you for making me do that because they sent me 776 psychologists, and I didn't think it was appropriate to email each one of them and ask them their
Right.
race, but I did email them that flyer for the mental health awareness fair.
So you
All
use that to your advantage.
776 of them.
I know that's right. Wow. So, last week we discussed also the issue of suicide,
Okay.
and we understand that blacks are less likely than whites to die of suicide at any age, but among African American teens as well as young adults, there has been an increase in attempts for suicide. Then we talked about how suicidal thoughts, plans, and attempts on the rise among blacks and African American adults, African American young adults between the ages of 18 and 25. 9.5% 18 to 25 compared to 6% in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a three-part question, right?
Okay.
So why do you feel, based upon your experience, why do you feel there's been an increase among suicide attempts among black and African Americans and blacks? And then let's answer that one first. What do you think has attributed to that increase?
I truly feel that some of the statistics are embellished, and meaning that I think there is more reported at this time.
Okay.
But I also know that African American teens, and I've seen a lot of them experience depression and anxiety, and because we don't believe in it, we downplay it.
Mm.
You had a question I think last week, and we will get into that, so I won't spoil it by saying that parents will typically not respond in the right way.
Mm.
So frequently, African American children don't seek the services or utilize services that would treat these disorders. So they feel like that's their only way out.
Mm.
The other thing is that minorities are faced with a lot of adversity that people don't frequently understand will cause them to be depressed or anxious. We also sometimes are over disciplinarians, meaning that we don't frequently sit down and try to understand our children. And so frequently, once again, they just want out in peace and they don't have answers for dealing with it.
Wow. Yeah, and that's a tough one, and we will talk about that a little bit later.
Hmm.
So the those who have attempted it, they've not been, and I guess I don't like to use successful, right? But it is what it is. So the attempts have not gone through. They've had plans, but they've not
Hmm.
gone through. So what do you think has attributed to the stopping of those attempts or making those attempts unsuccessful?
Well, poor planning. I don't know that they're utilizing the right strategies or actually researching how to do it. What I have found about suicide is that suicide is typically an impulsive decision.
Hmm.
It's not well thought out. So I've been able to save numerous clients because I have them contract with me. If you decide or your mind is telling you that you want out, you have to call me and you have to at least give me 24 hours to return your call because I return every call.
Hmm.
And what I have found, and I told them, if you still decide that you want out, I'm gonna help you do it. And they look at me and they're like, Dr. Banks, because I know the research and I base all of my practice on research, and it's an impulsive decision. So a lot of the times when they're not successful, it's because it wasn't well thought out. And the fact is, they're just acting on impulse.
Right. Because of the pain that they're dealing with at the moment.
That's correct.
And they just won't out.
They just
Right.
want out.
But generally if you can stall them or get them to stop and think about it, they more than likely won't go through with it.
That's correct.
Wow, good. And so that I guess that's why practitioners will ask, do you if they even if they're having suicidal thoughts and ideations, they'll ask you, do you have a
My
plan?
plan. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. So, you know, I stopped cussing last month, right? But there's still some stuff that still makes me want to cuss, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to put something out there because, of course, we see major depressive episodes arising among African Americans, young adults, and it's rising among all age brackets. But you have worked with children, and sometimes you work with parents. So let's ask this question. I'm going to put a statement out there, and I want you to tell me how you feel about that statement, and what would you say to somebody who, a parent who is parenting a child, how they would handle this, or you would say to a child who may be listening, how they can get the help that they need. So the statement that I want to put out there, and it was a comment that someone put out last week, and this statement, it always bothers me. It does make me want to cuss, right? And so the statement is this: you're just a child. What do you have to be depressed about? Tell me what you think about that statement, and how can you help us deal with that type of
You
stuff?
know, I get so many mixed emotions by that statement because it is a statement that will make you want to cuss. But at the same time, it's a skills deficit parents lack awareness. So because they look at depression and anxiety as an external disorder where something has triggered the depression, they don't understand that it can be chemically induced. They try to they try to debunk the chemical imbalance theory, but that's the furthest thing from the truth. We all know that chemicals control your behavior. And so depressed patients are typically experiencing a chemical imbalance and may need psychotropic medication. So it's an internal struggle, but the parent is not aware of the research, and so therefore they lack understanding and they make erroneous statements like that. The feelings of emptiness, worthlessness, sadness is controlled by neurotransmitters. And so low dopamine levels can trigger that, and parents don't understand that. So, although it makes me upset, make me want to cuss too, and Dr. Banks don't really use those words. I still understand that they have a skills deficit. So
Yeah.
the key is awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to talk about things that we can do to stay aware a little bit later on. But how can you help a parent who is a parent of a teen or a preteen or a young child, if their child comes to them and tells them, that they feel like they're depressed or they're not happy, things like that? What are some things that you would tell them to do to be able to help and support their child?
I think that they need to seek professional help for parents to get strategies to support them. I think they need to align themselves with the proper mental health treatment because at that point you can determine whether medication is needed, but you can also equip the child with strategies so that they can learn how to deal with their thoughts and their depressive thinking. And you can also teach the parent how to encourage the child to use those strategies as well as give them strategies of support.
Okay. So not just the child, but the parents need the strategy too. And so what if there's a child who they're not being parented well, and they just need somebody to talk to, and even when they go to people in their
School camp.
schools, maybe
Okay.
they go to their teacher and the teacher doesn't do anything about it, and they feel like they're at a loss. How can they do something to get someone to listen?
The access of care issue is a problem because typically if they're under 18, they're going to have parental or parent permission. So if they go to the school counselor and that's not effective, usually if the school feels that they are being neglected, they can place a call to the 1-800 or the child, what is it, the child abuse hotline, because it's considered neglectful behavior. If a child says that they're suicidal, usually the school will contact the mental health professionals to at least get an assessment done.
Yeah, okay, okay. So
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 they
they
have to act on it.
right. So if it's not yet at us where they're having suicidal ideations, but they're just not happy, and the teacher can tell, or they tell the teacher, hey, I'm just not happy. The teacher asks them, is everything all right at home? They say, yeah, everything good at home, but I'm just not feeling myself. They can't get help on their own, and they can't have an assessment done if it
If
is not gotten to the place to where it's major, like suicide.
they typically are going to have to talk to the school counselor, and usually if the school counselor is trained, maybe she can pull in the parent and try to facilitate that information. But without having a parent, they just can't go to an agency and try to be seen.
Wow. And so that if their parent can't be found, then it's the child is just wow. So
And even further, when you look at adults that struggle with severe mental health issues like schizophrenia, bipolar, you typically are at a loss with them too because over 18, they don't have insight into their mental health issues. And yet family members can't force them in unless they're at risk to themselves or someone else.
wow.
And so it's a battle. You typically have to do the 72-hour hold and prove that they're mentally unstable. And then of course do power of attorney. But it's a process.
Wow. And if they're having grandiose thoughts, more than likely they don't feel anything's wrong with them at that time.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's tough.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle. That's why awareness is so important.
Yeah. Wow. And so I think those are all my questions, Dr. Banks. So as we get ready to wind down, let's have some Q&A. If you have any questions out there, go ahead and put the questions in the chat, and we're gonna get them out there. So if you have any questions, go ahead and release those questions. I'm watching here on Instagram, and I'm also checking out the comments that you're putting in. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those questions in the chat. And Dr. Banks, while they're putting in questions, if someone wanted to get in contact with you on social media, how would they find you?
I am actually under my first and last name, but Arkansas Behavioral Center has a page that's linked to that. So if they search Arkansas Behavioral Center, it should come up.
Okay. All right. And if someone wanted to see you as a patient, if you are taking new patients, how can they locate you there?
They can either call the office at 501-537-0158, or they can reach out to me, via email, or I check all of my correspondence, so I'll get it.
Okay. And so that's 501-537.
70158.
0158.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna put it up there just to make sure that it is correct. And they can also go to your website, right?
That's correct.
ArkansasBehaviorCenter.co.
Uh-huh.
So it's no M on the end of that. It's just .co. All right, ArkansasBehaviorCenter.co, and then 501-537-0158. All right. So again, if you have any questions out there, go ahead and put them in the chat. And no questions. So Dr. Banks, I'm going to be working with you, and I don't know why I ended up on this panel, but I am.
Because
experts.
we need some experts.
And but I'll take it. I'll take it. If you think I'm an expert, then I'll take it. So you have something very significant coming up here in the Central Arkansas area. So you want to talk about that?
Yes, I am going to be hosting a mental health awareness fair in celebration of Mental Health Awareness Month. And this event is going to be held on May 21st from 11 to 3 p.m.
Okay, 11 3 p.m. So tell us a little bit more about this, because this is not your first time doing this. This is your first time doing it since we've had the pandemic. But tell us a little bit more about what this mental health fair entails.
Yes, so NAMI's theme this year is Together for Mental Health. So it was my goal to pull all resources together. I have Arkansas Diagnostic Center that I'm partnering with, Baptist Health, UAMS. I have a lot of medical entities that will be doing physicals and doing COVID vaccination updates. We have the Nurses Association that's coming out. I have numerous churches. But we're also going to have a good time.
Good.
The radio station will be broadcasting for all 4 hours and giving giveaways and
Wow.
drawings and things of that nature. We're going to have entertainment. I don't know if viewers are familiar with Tidwell, Mr. Tidwell's dance art, but
Okay.
he's going to bring his the Tidwell Project will be performing. I
Wow.
have some praise dancers that are coming to perform for us. I have some cheerleaders, what, Little Gym, I think is what they're called, but they're competition cheerleaders. So we're going to have all that on site. There's going to be yoga. I mean, and it's just going to be a wealth of resources. We're going to have a good time, but we're going to be very informative in getting the word out about mental health awareness.
Good deal. Good deal. And we have a question here. I don't know if it's a question or a statement. Yeah, it is a question. So this is Don, and I think you pronounced that Kiata. It says, my daughter had bipolar and refuses to take medication because of side effects, and she doesn't want to be labeled. How can I encourage or support her to get the help she needs? She's 25 and lives in another state.
We may want to start with getting her to seek a mental health professional without taking the medication. I'm not sure if she would be willing to see a therapist or someone, because once she's involved with the therapist, maybe they can encourage her. With her being 25, you can't force her into treatment. You can only provide encouragement and hope that someone will say something or do something that will change her life.
Yeah. So Don, if she's not in therapy, I guess Dr.
That would
Banks,
be
you're
the
saying
first step.
the first step is to try to encourage her to go to therapy
Right,
rather than to take her meds. Okay.
right.
All right. So that's a good segue into a question I had.
Hmm.
You know, some people think that you just take your meds. Some people think that you just go to therapy. How do you think that they both are necessary? And how do you think they work? You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah,
You actually believe that there are
three components.
three components. So, did you freeze up, Doctor?
Something froze up on me.
Okay,
Okay.
we can hear you.
So what was the question again? You said that I actually believe
Yeah.
there are three components.
Yeah. So talk about that for a little bit.
So because of you have to understand which comes first, the chicken or the egg. We don't know that here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, in looking at the theory of chemical imbalance, we do know that you can have a chemical imbalance that can alter your mood and all of the things and create anxiety and depression. Likewise, if you stay in a constant state of anxiety and depression for too long, you can actually alter your brain chemistry.
Wow.
So, when you think about it, you definitely sometimes need medication to get those chemicals in balance. That then allows you to employ the strategies that you learn with your therapist or during your therapeutic intervention so that you can ward off those negative thoughts, so you can learn how to think differently, and so you can do cognitive behavioral therapy to change those thoughts in the way you think. Now, I think spirituality is super important as well. There is a lot of research to suggest that people who have a grounding with spirituality do better, but there's not any true research aligning that it's necessary and paramount like I know it to be.
Yeah. So do you think that do you think that there are roadblocks preventing the research, or you think people don't want to waste their time doing the research, or what do you think that is?
I think for too long that they have looked at these as separate entities because people lack the understanding for the chemical imbalances that occur and they don't have the knowledge. They frequently say, well, you can fight that, just pray about it. And so you have spirituality not connecting with psychology, and you have psychology saying, well, this is possibly chemical and you don't need the spirituality. But I feel like in order to have great success, you definitely need all three.
Wow. Wow. And so I personally believe that too. You need all three working in unison,
That's
right?
right.
In order to help people, because the point is getting well,
That's right.
right? And we have another question out here. So the question is, what advice do you have for those in corporate America who have been faced with increased mental health issues and are seeking relief? A lot of people I know aren't aware that FMLA covers mental health. So this is Julie Nicole.
Once again, awareness is the first key. People need to be aware of their resources and available to what treatments can be effective for helping them through the difficult time.
Yeah.
I would suggest that in corporate America, it's a little bit more difficult because it all depends on which entity you're in and how that downplays with the FMLA. But the only thing that can be suggested is awareness.
Yeah. So need to be aware of the resources that are available to you. We talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm.
FMLA is available for mental health purposes,
Uh-huh.
and you also have EAP. Sometimes you're paying for those benefits and not using them, and so if you need a mental health break,
Right.
FMLA is
Mm-hmm.
available. And then also, if you need to talk to someone, most of the time, EAP will allow you 2 to 3 free visits before you are able to find, your own professional practitioner to be able to help you in those times. So seek out those resources. Go back to your benefits and look and see if that's available to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So again, thank you again, Dr. Banks, for joining us. I know because you're an early riser, right?
I am, but I'm going to listen to this wind down.
All right. And so thank you again. Again, you can reach Dr. Banks on Facebook at Camila Banks or Arkansas Behavior Center. You can also reach her also on her website, and that is Arkansas Behavior Center.co, or you can call the office at 501-537-0158. And don't forget to join us at the Mental Health Fair. that will be held at 8908 Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72205, 11 a.m., 3 p.m. All right. So we are now going to talk about before you close your eyes. Before you close your eyes, this is the inspirational moment of the East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down podcast. And so we're going to talk about before you close your eyes. So, Proverbs 13, verse number 12. It makes a statement. It says, and I'm going to read you the PKJ version. King James Version says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when desire comes, it's like a tree of life. I say that when what you desire is delayed, it messes with your heart and mind. But if it finally shows up, it's like you're living a brand new life. So before you close your eyes, I want to let you know that God of the universe is so in touch and in tune with the reality of negative impacts regarding your mental health that he placed such a relatable scripture in the Bible. But he also provided hope for the hopeless to let you know that the longings of your heart are not necessarily out of reach or unreasonable. Sometimes our disappointments arrive too soon, and in order to overcome them, we must have patience. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 through 5 tells us that trouble and distress fashions patience in us, and patience develops in us experience. And if we can hold on to the positive outcomes of our previous experiences, it provides us hope. And hope based on those previous experiences will never leave us disappointed. When we live by experience-based hope, we learn that things may not always work out exactly like we want, but they will eventually work themselves out. Again, things may not work out exactly like we want, but they will eventually work themselves out. So tonight, God's lullaby to you is this. If you got through that, you'll get through this. Hashtag God's lullaby. So before you close your eyes, always remember, you've gotten through several things in your life. You've encountered several problems, and you've had a bunch of delays in your life, but you got through them and they worked themselves out. So if you got through that, you'll get through this. This is Helen Jones' second son and Deborah Michelle's trophy husband, saying life is too short to play games, so keep it real. 2 fingers to the north. We're out of here. Thank you for joining us on East Coast Insomniac, West Coast Wind Down. See you again next week.